Welcome to today's training. It is called Four Alarm Focus, but the Afting Chemical Fire, and it is being presented by DJ Malone. I'll turn it over to DJ here in just a minute so he can kind of talk through who he is and his experience, as well as the actual presentation. So, some important information. If you've been here before, this is the same information you get every time, but I still want to do it. So important information is that this training is provided for free through the Missouri Professional Training Partnership. You can learn more about the Missouri Professional Training Partnership at moapco.org/training. On there, you will see a link for a online training catalog or platform. However, I have it worded, I'm not really sure. But that will show you every class that we've done for the past 3.5 to 4 years, to where you can access the ones that we still have up. Some of them have been pulled down to dated material, but the ones that we still have up are available still. The partnership does not ensure that this training is going to meet any continuing education requirements in any other state besides Missouri. It's just not in our purview to be able to do that at this point. We will still issue a certificate of training to you if you use the link that will be provided at the end of the session. In order to receive proof of attendance or proof of training, you must sign in using the link that will be provided, and we'll provide that towards the end of the session. If you're watching on demand, you can still receive a proof of attendance, but you still have to use that sign-in link. Ask your IT department to whitelist that email address, zachary.dykes@moapco.org. This is going to ensure that your certificate will be received and you get any further correspondence. On that sign-in form, there's also a little check mark at the end saying you want to sign up for notice of further or future classes. You only have to do that once ever, and then you'll be added to our mailing list. If you ever get tired of being on our mailing list, you can just simply, at the bottom, it'll give you an email address saying, send me an email, or send an email to that address saying to remove it, and you'll be automatically removed. So this is kind of what you're going to see when you hit the sign-in button. Today's session, since it's the first session of 2024, you'll only see this one session up there for now. And then just put your information in. If this is your first time attending and your agency's first time attending, what you put in there is probably going to be what you see. I may have to change your agency's name or maybe your name a little bit if you've been here in the past, and that's just for our record keeping purposes. We try to keep everything consistent as we go on. If you are interested in supporting the Missouri chapter of APCO or the Missouri Professional Training Partnership, we do have 2 challenge coins available. This is the first one. This is the Missouri chapter of APCO coin. And then we've also established a second one that is the Training Partnership coin that has our logo and our tagline, training today's heroes and preparing tomorrow's leaders, I believe. Developing today's heroes, that's what it is. So upcoming training that we have going on, February 14th, Outlaw Motorcycle Gangs will be presented by Angie Rogers. She is from Scott County, Missouri. And then sometime in March, I'm not quite sure when, I will be presenting a train derailment course. We'll get that information out to you here shortly after I can confirm some stuff. And then we're continuing to look at, my goal is to do at least one of these webinars per month for the remainder of the month. And then in June, we will also be doing our annual summer summit, which will have about 8 hours worth of training. So I'm looking forward to that. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. Otherwise, I'm going to get switched over to present this. And DJ, if you're on, go ahead and start your introduction, bud.
All right. I appreciate it, Zach. Like you said, good afternoon or good morning to those of us who are on night shifts right now. My name is DJ Malone. I'm with Central County Emergency 911 out of St. Louis County. I'll explain a little bit more about my agency here in just a few moments. But basically, this class is an overview of a very challenging call that we had one afternoon back in 2021. It was a chemical plant that had caught fire in the middle of the afternoon. And we had some challenges, faced some things that we had never been tasked with before. And even if we didn't have the resources available to us, we kind of thought outside of the box, and we got the job done at the end of it. So this is just an overview of the incident itself, and then we'll go over some of those challenges that we had. If you have any questions, Zach just said it there. Don't hesitate to ask it in the chat room there, and we'll get to them as we go along here. So I'm open to questions as we go as well. So just a little bit about myself here. I have 18 years of dispatch experience, and I have worked the Ferguson civil unrest parts 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or I don't even know how many we're up to on those. But anyways, we've also I've been experienced in natural disasters, several tornadoes, flooding up here in St. Louis County. I was part of the 800 megahertz radio system that we implemented here in St. Louis County. And also we just wrapped up a major fire station alerting project and deployed that earlier. Well, actually, I guess it's been a few months ago. I almost said earlier this year. So overall, I have 22 years of experience on the fire and ambulance side, starting out as a cadet on the rural fire department down in Rolla. That's where I grew up, and still to this day work part-time down there as a reserve firefighter, EMT. And then lastly, I am the MOAPCO East Region Ambassador. So if you're familiar with the Troop C area, it's the same counties that I cover through the MOAPCO organization. So we'll get started here. And we will talk a little bit about my agency, Central County 911. We serve the vast majority of St. Louis County, but we also have portions of Franklin County and Jefferson County as well. We also provide mutual aid to those borderline areas that we do not are not the primary dispatch service, but obviously if there's a fire, we're sending equipment as well. Overall, I have 33 fire and EMS agencies, no police. We are just fire and EMS. We have 87 stations, and we have over 300 frontline vehicles that we dispatch and keep track of. Last year, we did a record number, 172,000 calls. Just like everybody else, it keeps going on, keeps going up every single year. We utilize, well, I guess I should have that as a Central Square CAD, but formerly the TriTech. That's the platform that we use. And we also use a 800 megahertz radio system for our communications. Talking about Afton, the next, or the fire department that responded out there. Whoop, I'll go ahead and continue on about mine. My agency, we have 38 full-time dispatchers. We have 4 supervisors on the floor, and we are operational at this time. We are transitioning over to be off the board, so to speak. But we are operational, so that basically means we have an active role in the day-to-day operations. In this scenario here, I was the South radio operator, and so I was the primary dispatcher, so to speak, for this incident here. We also have 1 operations manager and also 2 full-time training division QA members in our organization. We run daytime staffing of minimum staffing is 8, and nighttime we can drop down to 5. And we work 12-hour shifts, 6 to 6, and then we also have a few swing shifts that are 10-hour positions throughout the daytime to kind of stack ourselves with the bell curve of the calls. And also we have 4 IT staff members and 1 full-time mapping guy. So we are a very large organization already, and we continue to grow every year. So, all right. So now talking about Afton, our fire department that was the primary fire district to respond. They serve the eastern side of St. Louis County, and they have about 8.5 square miles. They have about a 40,000, I think it's bumped up just a little bit more now, 40,000 population in their jurisdiction. They have 3 stations, with 38 career firefighter paramedics. And last year they ran just over 6,200 calls for service. So they are a busy department, mostly residential, but they do have portions of industrial and commercial properties like where this incident was here. So to give you an idea of where this incident happened at, it was called the Manor Chemical Company, and there's really not much information online. It's one of those companies that they just kind of do their business and just kind of lay low. They don't need to advertise, so to speak, because all of these companies utilize them for their transport services and such. So they already have a very well-established customer base. But they are a transport company, distributor, packaging for a whole bunch of different chemicals that they have on site there. Some of the chemical or on-site chemicals that we found out, you can see them there. There's a lot of methyl ethyl kill you quick type of chemicals that are on there. So quite a bit. They have quite a large property with many tanks, storage areas. They don't have too much indoor kind of transfer areas, but in this case, that is how this fire started, was whenever they were transferring chemicals from a truck over to a tank. So the incident happened again April 29th, 2021 in about 2:34 o'clock. Initial call came from the employee on the site itself. So we got it directly from the chemical company. After that, we started receiving multiple calls reporting this huge explosion, a lot of smoke. So we knew that there was going to be something going on with this call immediately. Whenever the units started to respond, they all started saying, heavy smoke can be seen from Station 1. So they knew it was going to be a good working fire. The fire chief, Nick Foz, he was the fire chief, not just the on-duty duty officer, but he went responding, and he knew that this chemical company had a lot of bad stuff to it. So before anybody was even on the scene, they went ahead and struck a second alarm to start getting units going. So we'll listen to the initial 911 call. Very interesting thing is the call taker, this was his second day of being released on his own. So, baptism by fire, almost literally, but we'll take a listen to the initial 911 call, and you can hear the panic in the caller's voice.
Fire ambulance, what's the address of your emergency?
6301 Higi, Manor Chemical, fire,
So the address you're making.
big fire,
Either like Higi and Valcor, or Valcor?
6301 Higi,
Be sure it's
right at the end of Valcor. 69, 60, oh, I'm so rattled. 6901 Higi, Manor Chemical, right at the end of Valcor.
All right,
Hurry,
where's
it's
the
a
fire
huge
at?
fire.
Sir, is there evacuation in progress? Police, you clear and en route to a safe distance?
Yeah.
Okay, we'll see you there.
Okay, so yeah, you can obviously hear that he was pretty rattled because this explosion happened pretty much right in front of him. Amazingly, he was okay, was not hurt at all. So that's how we started out this call here. So again, the second alarm was struck while the units were responding. Now the first in pumper or engine to this incident, their firehouse is only about 2 blocks away. However, they were not in quarters; they were coming back from a training. But yeah, you can definitely see the incident site from the engine house itself. And there's a little video there of some of the media that had caught, and some social media footage that we caught from the incident. And all of this multimedia that you're seeing, the pictures, video, and everything, about 95% of it was from that day and from that incident. So So you can see that it was documented very well by the public, in addition to the news that day. And obviously being 2:30 in the afternoon and on a weekday, a lot of people are out and about. So the first unit arrived 4 minutes 32 seconds after the initial phone call was received. They reported heavy fire and they planned to use a deck gun. If you're not familiar with that, that is the large stream of water that can be shot out of the fire truck itself. And that is used for lots of water at one time, a lot of high volume flow of water. And it can also shoot at a very long distance so they can, stay back from the fire itself. So that's what they had initially planned to do in order to attack this fire. You can see in the photos there that there are railroad tracks. That is an active railroad track. So BNSF was contacted to shut down the rail traffic next to that because they eventually were using hoses across the tracks itself. So the initial on-scene unit made contact with the plant staff, and they got as much information as they could. Information was that it was a tanker truck that had a solvent in it, and because of that, they didn't know the specifics of it at the time. So they decided not to approach it or attack it at any point yet because they didn't know what they were messing with. So they held off on fire attack, and they contacted the hazmat duty officer for St. Louis County. So here in St. Louis County, we do not have a dedicated team that is 24/7. So whenever we request a hazmat team, it's a scrambled response. So you may get one firefighter from this agency, two firefighters from this agency, an entire truck from this agency. It just all depends who's working for the day. And at dispatch, it can be kind of challenging because you start having units go out of service because of manpower, and then you're starting to deplete resources across the county. So we contacted the hazmat duty officer, who made contact with the on-scene command and started to make a game plan while they were responding. The placards that was seen on the trailers that were involved that they could see had the placard number of 1133. So if you're familiar with the Emergency Response Guidebook, also known as the ERG, the little orange book that comes that's published every 4 years, which this year we'll be getting a new one. Looked that up both on the scene and in dispatch, and we started reading about some of the hazards that were associated with it and how to establish evacuation zones and just some general instructions on how to attack this. So you can see there that Guide 128 was the page number for this, and that is, it says that they're fight fire from maximum distance, unmanned master stream devices, which would be like that deck gun, in order to cool the tanks. And then also the evacuation orders down there. They wanted initially to be, because it's on fire, they wanted to isolate about half a mile in all directions. So they started to do that, and command had requested us at dispatch a list of the street names within that half-mile area, and then they could start establishing those evacuation activities. So real quick, Zach, I'm seeing some pop-ups for some questions, but I'm not seeing it in the chat.
Yeah, so evidently when I set out the invite yesterday, the setting that I used does not give you the ability to use the chat, which, lesson learned, I won't do that again next time. The question and answer feature is in the triangle, square, and circle location. So if you click on there, there's a couple of buttons up there. One of them is a Q&A.
There we go.
I will be paying attention to that.
Okay. All right. Well, I will monitor the Q&A section there as opposed to the chat room. So real quick, Lori had a question. The hazmat team comprised of different individuals across the area. That is correct. So here in St. Louis County, we have 43 different fire districts across the county. And there are members of the hazmat team that is just sprinkled throughout the county. So anytime that an actual team response is requested, it is a scrambled response. Some departments will meet at a certain engine house and then deploy from there. Sometimes they are already all on one truck and they can respond. But there are hazmat team resources throughout the county. So, for example, the Creve Coeur Fire District, they have the main truck that responds. We call it HM23. So anytime that there's a team call out, that department will take that vehicle. Kirkwood has a decon trailer. Melville may have a logistics trailer. So it's just throughout the county as opposed to just one station. So it is very different. And trust me, St. Louis County can sometimes be very different. So, whenever the evacuations began, there was administrative staff, chiefs from surrounding departments and across the region started to assist the St. Louis County Police Department with those door-to-door evacuations. County police were the main ones to coordinate all of that, and they also coordinated the road closures around. And there is a nearby, there is a main feeder street that a lot of people travel to get into that southwest part of St. Louis County. So for them to shut that down in the middle of the daytime was just a traffic nightmare. So we also had media helicopters that we asked them to evacuate the airspace above because the smoke was just so high, and we just really didn't know yet what kind of chemicals that this could have an impact on. So we asked them to evacuate the airspace. They quickly got local emergency management was able to get a relief shelter opened up pretty quickly at the local Elks Lodge for a lot of the evacuees, because this chemical plant is located right in the middle of a neighborhood across those railroad tracks. There's a lot of residential area over there, and then across the street in the other direction, there's a very large apartment complex. So there was a lot of people that was affected within that half-mile evacuation zone. That was the initial request. So the primary staging area, because there were so many apparatus that were responding to this, was at that Afton Firehouse number 2, which was just a few blocks away. So once all the units arrived in staging, they waited till everybody got there, and then they gave a briefing. The commanders in charge of this incident gave a briefing to everybody so everybody would be on the same page. Very unique incident here with a lot of high hazard, so they wanted to make sure everybody got the messages and knew what everybody else was doing. The St. Louis City Fire Department, they have a chemical unit, and we requested that to respond. You can see it down there in the corner. Very weird looking truck, honestly, whenever you see it in person. But they have that unit that was actually funded, I believe, by Ameren to help get them for regional use as well. So come from the city there, but we requested that. The Region C state coordinator was monitoring the situation. He notified the state fire marshal and kept him up to date. The coordinator is Chief Brown with the Eureka Fire District, which is here in St. Louis County. So he was following along the entire time. And again, with the media helicopters, we asked them to get out of the area there. They were still overhead. Additional resources based off of the ERG recommendation. We also notified the sewer district because of the runoff of the water that was being used to attack this fire. And also the Missouri Department of Natural Resources, their environmental emergency response truck responded. That's that navy blue looking truck there. Few people may be familiar with it, but basically Missouri DNR has this unit that is on call 24/7. There's a phone number to call them, and you can notify them of hazmat situations, things that are going to affect waterways, streamways, and they can determine if they need to respond as well. So it's a really good resource, and we've used them many times. And once again, media helicopters were asked to evacuate the immediate airspace. And at about this time, a third alarm was requested. And that was going to be staging on the east side of the incident, opposite of where all the resources were. They wanted to get some more resources across the railroad tracks. So a third alarm was requested there. And then they also requested additional TAC channels, radio channels that were assigned for specific operations, such as the hot zone, staging, primary attack, things like that. And also communications with us up at the dispatch center. So notice that I keep on saying the media helicopters were requested to evacuate the area. Well, they did not listen to us on our multiple requests. So we ended up going to the top of the chain. We contacted the FAA and requested a flight restriction. Never in my dispatch career did I think that I was going to call the FAA and shut down airspace in my line of work, but by God, we did it. So we contacted them, and they shut down the airspace up to 2,000 feet in 5-mile radius of the incident. So those helicopters had no choice because it was a federal mandate to get out of the area. So you can see the actual text from the flight restriction that was issued there with all the official lingo. I'm not a pilot whatsoever, so a lot of that's Greek to me, but you get the idea of what it was in there. So we contacted the Kansas City office who's in charge of this area. They contacted the regional office here in St. Louis, and we got that flight restriction issued. So no more helicopters in the area. In addition, we also contacted the University City Fire Department drone operator, and they have a drone that was pretty sure it was the only one in the region at the time that was used for fire operations. But they wanted that because they could get an idea on the thermal imaging of where the heat sources were, if they were making any progress with these attack lines. And to see where they needed to focus in on. So drones are becoming very popular and increasing a good resource for the fire service, in addition to law enforcement. But in the fire service, it's really helping out on like brush fires. Whenever you get in some of these woods that you don't know how far back that the fire line is extending to. Obviously, it's good for searches and such. And in this case here, to get an idea of heat sources for this very high hazard fire. So anyway, so commanders were grouped around the operator, the drone pilot, and they could see the progress of their crews that were working on there. We'll take a look at some of the actual video from the drone at this incident here, and you can get an idea of how you can see the heat sources there. So you see the fire there raging, and then you can see the attack line there and them extinguishing the fire, and you can see the progress that they were making. So compared to the start of that video there, you see how it was before they even had water on the fire, and then you can see how much it's gone down there. So pretty cool resource there that they used. And of course, now we have like 5 departments that have their own drones. So, man went ahead and struck a 4th alarm and had a separate staging area to the west of the incident as well. Mainly because it was really hot that day. Wasn't like over the top, but working for something like this, you can get exhausted very quickly. So they requested a 4th alarm for manpower. And we were also receiving up at dispatch additional calls from citizens who were just needing help getting to where the evacuation shelter was. We also had some elderly residents that they were calling in needing medications that were at their residence. We had a couple college students who was confused on how to get home and how to get to work and all that kind of thing. So. But we did send additional ambulances to assist in those citizen assist type of needs that were with it.
DJ, you have a question in there.
Oh, let's take a look here. Do you have access to drone feed in dispatch? We do not at this time. I know there's been some conversation of that, especially with the different platforms that they have out now to host those kind of feeds. But right now we do not. So all that was just file footage. All right, so the media staging area, obviously we knew that the media was tracking this every bit of the way, especially with those helicopters that we ran off. But here in St. Louis County, we have a really good PIO program. There's not too many PIOs around St. Louis County because we all work together very well when it comes to like mutual aid and sharing resources and such. So Lieutenant Coppin here with the Metro West Fire District, he's well known in the local media world and does a great job of doing these kind of press conferences and working resources and keeping media happy with information, stuff like that. So he was on the scene there, and him along with the St. Louis County Police PIO worked together to do media briefings away from the scene. And it really helped with a lot of the phone calls that were coming into us up at dispatch. A lot of media was just trying to get information that they wanted to confirm that one little detail about the incident. So they would call up to dispatch in the middle of everything. So it really helped out. But this is a video clip here. We won't watch the entire thing, but we'll hear about like 90 seconds or so, just the general initial press conference.
2:33 this evening, or about 2:30 this evening, a call came in for a chemical fire at 6901 Hege Road. That's the Manor Chemical Company. Initially, when crews arrived on scene, they were told there was could be up to 10 different chemicals involved. There was also a tanker truck involved and the actual structure itself. So 3 components there. The first priority upon arriving on scene was evacuation. Initially, it was determined to be a quarter-mile evacuation, and then as that got underway, it was moved up to a half-mile evacuation, and that occurred first. So during this time, all employees of the company were able to get out and evacuated without issue, and folks that were displaced from their home and evacuated from their home were offered refuge at the Afton Elks Lodge, which is at Hege and McKenzie, I believe. Evacuation occurred during this time. The fire was burning. It was contained to an area, and there was deemed to be no inherent risk at that time. That evacuation was the more important priority at that time. So when fire extinguishment began, the call quickly moved up to a 4-alarm fire. So for us, what 4 alarms mean is you just take what would normally respond to a fire call and multiply it by 4. So in St. Louis County, we're fortunate to have mutual aid, and all those things happen automatically. So dispatch can just call for more help, and it comes. So in the end, we've got about 13 fire department agencies on scene at this time. St. Louis County Police is with us. So a 4th alarm encompasses about 62 units. So units is a truck for us. So there's 62 trucks here working on this call right now.
Yeah, so he did a good job there of keeping the media
evening,
happy with a lot of their inquiries, and giving the information that that the public should know at that point. And honestly, we weren't hiding anything. There wasn't really anything sensitive, so to speak, about this incident to not come out with the public. But it was nice to have the PIOs out there in one location for the media to stay put at and away from the scene, so they could get their information and we could do our part as well. So Donna had in the chat room about the drones and how they fall under the same restrictions for airspace, for helicopters, planes, etc. I myself am not too much knowledgeable about the drone program, but I do believe that they do. However, if you read the flight restriction that was issued, there's a clause in there. He's backing up here. There's a clause in there that says only relief aircraft operations under the direction of Afton Fire Protection District are authorized in the airspace. So the drone there on the scene was authorized to be in there. So they were exempt from that flight restriction. But yes, I do believe that drones, they have to follow those same regulations or restrictions that are issued by the FAA. So it's a good question. He's going to continue on there. So something that happened during this was a Mayday situation during this.
Sorry, before you go on, you've got another question in there.
Yeah, I saw that. I was going to get to it afterwards, but
okay.
But the Mayday was declared for a firefighter that was down in the warm zone. So it was that area, not with the actual attack of the fire, but just outside of it. So command acknowledged it immediately. They assigned an ambulance from the staging area to respond over there. The sector commander himself was very calm, and he requested 2 additional engines and an ambulance to that area. From the time that the Mayday was declared to the time it was cleared was only 1 minute and 41 seconds. And it was because of a heat exhaustion that we ended up finding out. He was dragging large diameter hose across the railroad tracks. And actually that bottom left-hand corner picture, that was the actual firefighter that had went down. So we're going to listen to the Mayday here. And honestly, it's one of the most calm Maydays that I've heard ever. And you can hear how coordinated and organized that command was to handle the situation.
Command, Croydon Command, Mayday, Mayday, Mayday.
You know the Mayday, go ahead.
Mayday, ambulance over to Croydon Command for a firefighter down. Ambulance over to Croydon Command for a firefighter down.
That's clear. You got a firefighter down off Croydon. The firefighter down in the hot zone or outside the hot zone?
He's outside the hot zone.
801, I'm back in attack. We have a firefighter down in the warm zone.
1117 to be dispatched to the Croydon area for down firefighter.
All units on TAC 23, stand by, so emergency traffic, we have a Mayday on Croydon. 1137 is being assigned to that task for the firefighter down at Croydon.
I just need an ambulance and 2 more engine companies over here to relieve personnel. Firefighter is okay. We do need to transport him though.
That's good. The firefighter's out of the hot zone. 1117 is en route to your location for the Mayday. Let us know when you've cleared the Mayday.
You can clear the Mayday. We've got him in the cold, warm zone now, and we're taking care of him.
That's clear. Command post to all units operating on TAC 23. Go back to normal operations. We've cleared the Mayday.
So that audio was actually real-time audio. The only part that I had redacted and reduced was that whenever you heard those double beeps. So that was the actual radio traffic in real time. And like I said, command was amazingly calm and very organized Mayday to get that firefighter out of there. And glad that it was just a heat exhaustion case as opposed to something more serious. So, and I'll talk a little bit about how me at dispatch did not intercept during that Mayday like we typically would in the policy. So, so in the chat there, some of the environmental wildlife effects from the explosion, including in the rural area, would we call and notify them for wildlife and such. Yeah, so that was some of the worry about the runoff is what chemicals are being mixed in with this water that is eventually getting to the drains. There is a nearby, we call it River de Pear, but it's not really a river. It's just more of a drainage area. But that leads to the Mississippi River. So, so that was some of the concern is, okay, well, what are these chemicals? And whenever it is mixed with water, what kind of effect is that going to have on the animals and such? So that is why we notified them. In the rural environment, yes, I still would. And also kind of to follow their guidance if we need to notify the conservation area and some of those other resources that aren't like frontline that we typically think about, but does have an impact on the environment. So I would, in a rural environment, notify Missouri Department of Natural Resources, and they're very knowledgeable about who else needs to be notified and just basically follow their lead. So
I would like to add that when you do call the Department of Natural Resources, they're probably going to ask to speak with somebody on scene. They're just, number one, they're going to understand that you're busy. They're going to try to cut out the middleman. And sometimes it's easier for them to speak directly to an officer or a fire unit on scene than to go through communications. So just be prepared for them to ask for that. They also understand if you tell them no, that the officer is busy and we can do it over the radio. At the patrol, we deal with them quite often when we have like overturned trucks and stuff like that. So that's been my experience with the Missouri Department of Natural Resources, at least. So
Yeah, very good resource to have. And like you said, with them contacting the incident command directly, it cuts you out as the middleman. And there's a lot of questions that dispatch is not going to know, just simply because they have incident specific questions or observations that need to be from the scene. So yeah, it's a good thing to not have to be the middleman there and just pass it off to somebody else. So, but yeah, they will ask a lot of questions on there. Also in the chat, somebody who's very knowledgeable about the drone operations that says that the maximum altitude is 400 feet above the ground for that. So that restriction went to, I believe it was 2,000 feet or 2,000 feet. So that was more for like the incoming planes to Lambert Airport. And we have a couple of smaller airports around St. Louis over there in that area. So, but yeah, drones operate in their own Class G airspace on there. So thank you, Anonymous, for that information. So we also requested the canteen team, which is a rehab small association that comes from, at the time, just north of St. Louis County. They are a group of volunteers who will come out and provide coffee, snacks, energy drinks, fruit, things like that to these working fires. They have since expanded to the South region as well, where this incident was. But initially, they came there from North St. Louis County. They established it over at the Afton Firehouse number 2, a few blocks away, where the primary staging location was. So all of our firefighters remained hydrated and had their nutrients and all that kind of good stuff while they were out there for the few hours. So in all, we had 62 units assigned to this incident. That included 13 departments and over 100 personnel that were on site. The call was received at 2:34 in the afternoon. They placed it under control at 5:17, and the incident was cleared at 8:45 that night. So in all, just over 6 hours that they were on the scene until it was turned over to the property owner, and Department of Natural Resources, I believe, is who they primarily turned it over to. A lot of it because of the hazmat cleanup and stuff. So that was the time frame on that. Ended up being that most of the chemical that was involved was acetone. So that is basically it's a liquid solvent that breaks down other substances. So you see that a lot in like nail polish remover, paint and varnish remover, things like that. So that was the primary chemical that they were offloading, and they estimated about 10,000 gallons of acetone and a couple other different flammable liquids that had burned on the site there. They determined that it was a static electricity while they were unloading the product from one of the tanker trucks. So apparently some of the equipment was not grounded properly, and one little spark went kaboom. And amazingly, nobody was hurt at the plant there, and just a few, like the heat related firefighter injury. I think they had just a couple other very minor injuries, but yeah, there at the plant, nobody got hurt, and which is amazing after you see how rapid that fire was from the very get-go. So, and then with the 1 mile radius of the evacuation, they successfully removed about 1,200 people from that area. So a lot of people were at work because it was in the daytime there, but still 1,200 people is quite a good number to evacuate there in just a couple hours. So the after action review that we had, some of the challenges that we faced there at dispatch, that's an actual picture that I managed to get in the middle of that incident. So you can see I had the emergency response guide there, along with some of our policies binders that we had at the time. They're talking about hazmat calls and such. I think I may have the evacuation sheet there as well. And then you can see the CAD background with a lot of red on there. So that was actually one of our challenges that we had with the CAD system, is that it was hard to visualize all of the units that were assigned to the specific alarm levels. For example, the third alarm that was struck, all those units were for staging. I could not tell, looking at my screen, which units were there for the staging area for that purpose itself. We also got a lot of telephone calls from chiefs that were not even involved in the incident, but they wanted to know the information. So I don't know about your agencies, but we get a lot of, like, for example, that whenever we the hazmat duty officer request. So that page got sent out and it says on call hazmat duty officer, contact Central County. We got a lot of phone calls from other chiefs that said, well, I don't have the duty, but what do you got going on? Well, that gets in the way of all of the actual 911 calls elsewhere going on in the county that's coming in, plus the chaos, the organized chaos of this incident coming in. So that was actually one of the challenges that we had on there. So in addition, the monitoring of the TAC channels. So whenever we send out a first alarm or a structure fire response, we assign one tactical channel. And from there, if incident command needs additional, they just simply request them. So the dispatch consoles itself, we had 8 people working that day, but 4 of them were on the call taking side. 4 of us were on the radio. So I took the primary communication with command, and then as additional incidents came in, because you can see our tactical TAC channel status board there, we had several incidents going on that needed its own channel. We just started to deviate that out amongst the staff that was qualified in order to use the radio. But a lot of noise in there, as you can imagine, for monitoring TAC channels. So in addition, the dispatch consoles here, we have priority over the field radios. So if somebody's talking out in the field and we key up, we will actually talk over them, and everybody out there will hear us. So there was some hesitation on my part to talk whenever there was priority traffic and conversations being held from command. There's an example there, the airing of the staging location. I needed to relay that to the incoming units that were getting closer, but there was a crew on the ground asking for more pressure on their hand line. So it was, I had to make the decision of waiting, and so you had these units that are requesting information, but I can't get it to them because to me, it's more of a priority for that crew that's on the fire ground. So, and then in addition, whenever we would assign additional TAC channels, there's no way for us to see what channels were reserved for its purpose, other than noting it in the comments of the call. Well, this call ended up having like close to 200 lines of comments, so it's very easy for it to get flooded and lost within the comments itself. So, that was one of our challenges there. It's like, oh, which channel was for staging? I think it was 25. So yeah, that's what we had for that. The staging locations. So whenever command would assign a staging location for each alarm level, sometimes those locations were not in our CAD system. So for example, here, I believe it was the third alarm, they asked for them to stage at Yorkshire Plaza. Yorkshire Plaza was not in our CAD system. So we went to Google, did a Google search. There was nothing in there in that area. I think that there's a Yorkshire Plaza in like West Virginia or something like that. So, so whenever we were doing our research there, we saw a South Yorkshire Drive, which was a street just kind of close to it. So we actually sent them to Yorkshire Drive, thinking that was the location. Well, it actually wasn't. You can't see it very well in that photo there, but that shopping center at the very top, it says Yorkshire Village. That's the name of that strip mall area right there. Well, just common names like that is not in our CAD system. The businesses are in our CAD system. So command, they called it Yorkshire Plaza. Well, it's actually called Yorkshire Village. So there was some, miscommunication or false information with that. So that was one of our challenges. Another is that there's no way to route the units to a staging location. So our incidents in our CAD system, which, by the way, Melissa, we use the Central Square or Tritech CAD is the CAD system that we use. The incident location is where you'll get your directions to. We had a lot of mutual aid companies that do not run calls in this area that were responding to the incident and to these staging locations. So, so I had, for example, a Eureka fire truck, which is, 20 miles away from the incident. They're responding into this scene, and we're telling them, hey, respond to, Yorkshire Drive. Well, they have no idea where that is. The CAD computers tell them, where the fire is. So they may be in their trucks, trying to Google it on their own phones, kind of a thing. So it would have been nice to have a way to route units to a staging location and give them the directions to it. So, and then I already touched on that about the CAD comments is used just to designate the multiple response channels. So with the accountability checks, it is standard for us to do 20-minute accountability checks from the time that the incident was received. And so in this case here, once they got established and there were many chiefs on the scene, they were doing their own accountability checks for their own sectors or divisions that they were responsible for. So as it went on, further checks were not prompted by us at communications. But it was one of those where, like we said, we had over 100 personnel there. That's quite a bit of accountability because, by the time you get done doing all 100, it's time for another one. So everything was pretty controlled with and they were confident they're on the scene with command of keeping track of everybody. So this one was kind of interesting here. So there was a request made at one point that they needed 2 100-foot ladder trucks to respond to a specific area over there. At the time, there is no go-to resource to know what trucks were over 100 feet on their ladder trucks. As in, there's no way to research that or put that in as a capability in our CAD system. So we actually use personal knowledge to know that, hey, Kirkwood 1535 is it's a bucket truck, so it's over 100 feet. There was a couple of us that knew which trucks, fit that request. But as a result, we actually had an apparatus numbering change throughout the entire St. Louis region over the last year or so. So now here in St. Louis, we have a 4-digit apparatus numbering system. And the very last number tells you what type of resource it is. So like a 0 is just a regular pumper. A 7 is an ambulance. An 8 is a brush truck. Now, in today's world, if the number is a 2, that is a ladder truck that has a ladder stick of 95 feet or less. If it is a 5, it is 95 foot or higher. So now, if we would have this chemical plant again fired today, and they request 2 100-foot ladder trucks, I know that I need to assign trucks that have a 5 at the very end of it, because that's going to fulfill that length height requirement. So pretty cool change there that came with that one. So, and then the Mayday that was declared. They did a verbal only. They did not use the emergency alert button, which actually would have given them radio priority on our 800 megahertz system. And command immediately acknowledged it on that. And we as in Central County at dispatch, we never made the announcement, which is actually in the policy. Our policy is to hit the alert 2 tone, which is that high-low tone to us. And we did not do that because we would have overridden the units that were out there that was talking and hearing them. I mean, we all heard the Mayday. They were very controlled. They had good communication. They knew what they were doing. So we at Central County, we just kind of backed up and we didn't intercept at all. They had it under control, and we didn't have to go through the policy that's in place about alerting the alert tone, moving all the traffic to a different tactical channel. It says in our policy to upgrade the alarm. Well, it was already at a 4th alarm. So if I would have done a 5th alarm, now we got even more apparatus coming in, and it was very controlled Mayday, as we like to say there. So, so it was a very interesting Mayday process that we had. But in the end, Central County didn't do too much other than monitor the situation. So, when it came to the evacuation resources, so command did request those lists of streets that we had. We have a full-time mapping person at Central County, and so he was able to get that information pretty quickly at the time. However, there was no way for us to get it to the units out there. The CAD system does have a attachments feature. However, it's not enabled on their end. So that was neat to find out. But even if we did, that was in a Microsoft Excel program, and the computers out in the field in the units does not have Microsoft Office programs to it. So they wouldn't even be able to see the data anyways, even if we did utilize that. So what we ended up doing was taking a picture of it on my cell phone, and then I texted it to a chief that was at the command post. And those are the actual photos there of the streets. So that's how we worked around that one. But we also used at dispatch a mobile app in order to do the evacuation. The actual app that I used is no longer available in the app store, but the ERG emergency response guide does have its own app that is a QR link to it. And in there, it is a great resource to have. You can easily look up placard numbers to see what these chemicals are. You can also create a map for evacuation zones. There's a screenshot there of this incident here that I did this morning with this app. You can put in there like wind direction even, and if it's involved in a fire or not, because that's going to make a difference. So really cool resource there. So there's a QR code there if you would like to download that onto your phones. And yeah, so the emergency response guidebook, if you do not have one in your communication center, I highly recommend it. They are free. Get a hold of your fire department. They should have some extra copies, or at least know the resources in order to obtain them. I know the Missouri Department of Transportation, I believe, also provides them. But this year, an update will be coming. They publish that book every 4 years. In North America, both between Canada and the United States. So there will be a new edition coming out pretty soon, and they usually advertise those very well to the public safety agencies. So, but once we obtain that placard information, again, there was no way for us to push that out to the field. They do have the ERGs as well. But it's just sometimes nice to have it on like a digital platform, like through the CAD system and such. And then whenever it came to the flight restriction request, again, we had the media we try to have a good working relationship with the local media. Like whenever they call in, I tell my team members, don't hide any information that we haven't already put out on the scanner. All they have to do is just hit rewind on the online scanner apps and stuff, and they're going to hear the same information, and it's just easier not to argue with them and just tell them. But in this case here, they were very resistant because they wanted that good footage of the fire. And I'll admit there's some really cool video of this fire and everything, but obviously safety first. And one of the stations here just said, we're not moving unless unless we have FAA orders to get out of there. Well, by golly, we fixed that. So, but the county police PIO, they were able to get to a couple of them to comply while we were processing that temporary flight restriction request. So, but yeah, we contacted the operations center is actually out of Kansas City, and then they have a district office here in St. Louis. But through the proper notification chain, we actually contact Kansas City for this area, and I would venture to guess that it's probably statewide about that. just the way that they had those regional offices set up. So, and then we ended up developing a policy for any TFR requests in the future. So in my 18 years, that has been the only time that I've ever even thought of putting one of those. But hey, we got a policy for it now. So
when you did that, did you do that under your own authority, or did you have to be requested to do that by the fire chief on scene?
The incident command is the one that prompted us and requested this. I'm assuming that somebody on site there probably had that knowledge that was an option for us, because certainly none of us knew that was something, and we never did think about that. So yeah, we were prompted by the incident command, but I believe as long as you're from a public safety agency, a dispatch service, they'll process that. So.
Okay. And then I just had one thing to add about the ERG.
Sure.
For those agencies who have access to, in Missouri's mules, but inlets across the country, you can actually search the placard numbers. There's a hazmat lookup through that. So if you don't have readily available access to an ERG, you can use the command to access that in mules or NCIC. Sorry, inlets.
So whenever we contacted the railroad to shut down all the rail traffic, the CAD map was used to determine which rail line runs through there. If there was a dispatcher that didn't know which railroad runs through there, there's a lot of railroad tracks here in St. Louis County. So we could have, I think we've got 7 different railroads that run through our area that we dispatch for. So we utilized the CAD map there to determine which railroad that there was and the contact number. Tammy had a question a little bit earlier. Does BNSF have their own hazmat or fire department that could assist in this incident? Kind of, sort of. So I would say yes and no. So they don't have a fire department per se, but they do have hazmat resources that can assist the local jurisdictions with incidents. St. Louis is actually one of the staging locations for some of that hazmat equipment. So they are able to provide foam if necessary. They've got trailers that are just stocked with foam. They also have some experts that they can contact. They may not be locally, but they do have access to them. But one of the things whenever you call, if you've never called the railroad before, you're not calling a local person like here in St. Louis. Whenever we call BNSF, we're talking to somebody in Fort Worth, Texas, which is where their network operations center is. And if you tell them, I need the trains shut down right there on Hege Road, at the 8900 block of Hege Road in Afton, Missouri, they're going to sit there and go, where? But if you have the DOT number, which is assigned to every single bridge and railroad crossing in North America, there's a little blue sign that is at the railroad crossings. Take a look next time you go across a railroad crossing, you'll see it, because it's a federal law that they have to have it. If you give them that DOT number, they will punch that in and they will immediately know where you are at. So in this case here, my call taker probably said, DOT 663-829 P as in Paul. They typed that up and boom, they knew exactly where to shut down that line's traffic. So if you have that resource that can incorporate into your CAD system through like a GIS layer, I encourage it. If not, have a list. I started out dispatching down in Rolla, and we could type in railroad in our CAD system, and all of the crossings that we had served, because there was only one rail line that goes through Rolla, it had all the DOT crossing information on there. So it was easy access for anybody to look it up. But they will definitely like that information, as opposed to them having to research it themselves and even risk getting the wrong location that's out there. So in addition, the employees absolutely shine that day. 3 of 3 of my teammates there had been released from different levels of training within the last month. Sure, every agency works shorthanded, and we have a lot of new employees in this field. Yeah, 3 of my 8 had been released only within the last month. And like I said, that initial call taker, he had just gotten released, so did well on that one. So, but in addition, many people use different tools and resources that typically we don't use, such as like that railroad lookup there. And so they took advantage of those tools in the toolbox, that cliche phrase that we like to use in this field. They also assisted the evacuees on different transportation methods. We had one dispatcher assisted a older person that didn't know how to call an Uber. So he took the time to kind of step them through that, which was pretty neat. But yeah, so even if it wasn't directly a unit that was requesting anything, my call takers were doing great assisting those citizens for this very unique situation here. So we assigned one call taker to be the point of contact whenever it came to any notifications that had to be made, any callbacks or requests to handle certain things that the command wanted. She was able to be that one person that we took out of the call taking rotation. You were dedicated to this incident, just working the phones for it. So that was great on that. If I needed something, I could say, "Hey, Paula, can you call emergency management and requested porta potties or something?" She could have done that. So, and in addition, we had our admin staff that was there. And they helped out with also notifications, looking up information, any policies that may have been in place, and also just giving us, coverage to sit down and take a break, run to the bathroom real quick, things like that. So they did a good job there of assisting us as well. We have a really good admin team at my agency. Very fortunate to be operational as well. Very familiar with the operations, so works wonders. And if that wasn't stressful enough, immediately after work, I went and did an escape room with everybody. But we were able to get out of there with just a few minutes to spare. So it was quite a day there back in 2021. So very interesting stuff there. So it looks like Shannon there, you got a raised a hand. Zach, I don't know if you can help that out there.
I'm trying. I've never done this aspect of it, so give me just a second.
And yes, Lori, a piece of cake. Yes, it was running off of high blood pressure. We'll say that it was a nice little cool down. So no, I'm a big escape room enthusiast. We've done a group of people that I'm with. We usually try to do one every month. There's a lot of new escape rooms here in St. Louis, and we've done over 40 so far over the last few years. So they are really, really fun. One of those cheesy kind of things at first, you're just like, I don't know if I want to do that. But once you do one, man, they are so fun to do.
Okay, I'm not finding the ability to allow her to speak. So
Right.
if you would use the ask a question feature, we'll address it at that point.
There's my contact information. If you want to email me, I'm more than happy to provide a copy of this. If you have any specific questions or would like some resource information, more than happy to share. We love to help each other out at my agency if you need some information. We are very fortunate here in St. Louis County to have a lot of access to those kind of resources as opposed to in a rural environment. But I come from a rural environment down in Rolla, so I understand those challenges. And but whenever you can think outside of the box, like that evacuation list. Well, we couldn't get to him, so what do? We took a picture on our phone and texted it. Just thinking outside the box like that can really help with the success of everything. So yeah, even in the rural environment, there are ways to get some resources. The state mutual aid program is a wonderful program where even if it's not like a bordering agency to call for help, at the state level, there are so many things across the state that they can help you with. If you need, an air support team for a brush fire out of control, well, we can get a hold of the forestry division. They may be able to send a helicopter to you. Just things like that. So the MPSCC, we've had some good fire related courses over the last few years, including the state mutual aid program. That was kind of like an introductory program that Grant had put together. That just kind of gave you the information on what resources are available and how to request them. But yeah, so take a look at the MPSCC lineup for this year. I believe we have a couple fire classes. I'm not too sure on that one. I haven't seen the actual list yet. But yeah, it's all about just finding out how to get there. So Shannon there, dispatcher Webster Groves, Oxford, Yorkshire Plaza too. Yeah. I think we just need to change that in our CAD system, Shannon. So I know it's right across the street from Afton's area there for Webster, but as much as we respond over there, we just need to add that to our CAD system. So yeah. But if anybody else has any questions or anything, yeah, that's our presentation for today. Hand it back over to Zach.
Okay. So I did just want to share one more little resource. If you go to radar.weather.gov, that is actually the National Weather Service's fairly new radar system. But one of the cool things that they have on there is if you go to the hamburger menu, which is these 3 lines up here, it'll pop this up. You can click to show the Air Route Traffic Control Center, and it'll tell you that's what these boxes are, but it'll tell you where you fall into. So you can see that like right here north of St. Joseph area falls into probably the Omaha region. This is all the Kansas City region, and then this is Memphis or Little Rock. I think it's Memphis. So so if you're trying to figure out where you fit in and which place you should call, this will kind of help you out. I just about hit the wrong button, which would have been not great. So we are going to be looking at doing additional fire, because I know in the last 4 years we haven't done many. I think this is number 2 in the last 4 years. So I am looking at doing more fire throughout the year. If there's anything else that you guys would like to see, please don't hesitate in letting me know or putting it in the sign-in box or the survey box, because that will help us plan out our year. But other than that, we'll leave it open for just a second. Long, yay, fire, Lori says. Oh, yes, the other thing on that I wanted to point out was that all of the major train areas, they've also got not only the emergency line, but they've got specific law enforcement that is federally authorized for them. So they want to be notified of that as well. So just keep that in mind, and we'll kind of go over that here in in March when we do the overview of the train. If you want to get kind of a good read, if you are a member of APCO, there is a PFC magazine that was just published in November. The November and December issue has a train derailment one that I just read today, and it goes over a lot of good information about dealing with fire departments, or not fire departments, but dealing with trains during these emergency situations. So with that, I thank you guys for taking time out of your busy schedules to come out here and further your continuing education. We are a profession, and part of being professionals is ensuring that we don't become stagnant. And you guys obviously took time out of your day to come learn about an incident that doesn't occur every day. So thank you guys for that.
Yes, thank you very much. Appreciate it.